Well, we had a lot of people that were with companies like State Farm, for example, that were non-renewing policies in different areas to try and reduce their exposure to wildfire. And people were very upset about it, and we were very upset about it. Everybody was. And now we're looking back and we're saying, oh, maybe they knew something we didn't. They're utilizing some of this catastrophe modeling that's going on. Fortunately, all of those people had a significant period of time to try and obtain other coverage. And we did the best we could anyway, and I assume everybody did when they were calling around looking to get coverage, to check with every other company that's available, everything from the private companies to the non-admitted market, all the way to the California Fair Plan, to be able to obtain some type of coverage so they don't end up uninsured. Some people, let's just say, I'm going to pick on poor State Farm because that's the name that we hear a lot about, because they non-renewed 1,626 policies in Pacific Palisades, in that one zip code, 90272. And that was a large chunk, as you can imagine, of people that they had insurance on. And people might have been paying X number of dollars. They might have been with them for 20, 30 years, whatever the case might be. They receive a non-renewal notice. When they start shopping, because the market in California was already tight, and in areas such as the Palisades, even tighter, now all of a sudden you have this influx of people looking to get policies. Guess what happens to the companies that are writing? Those prices go up even more because there's a finite amount of companies that are writing policies in that area. So some people might have decided that they just didn't want to spend that money. Some might have decided to partially insure. Maybe they would insure just the structure, and they would choose not to insure, for example, their personal property. People had some choices like that to make based on the cost. I don't personally know, I guess, which would make sense, what people would do if they chose to not purchase anything. I know that it was very, very hard to obtain coverage. I can't overemphasize that enough. It was not like it normally is, years back, where somebody would say, I'd like to get a quote for my home insurance. We could check with half a dozen companies, work out what coverage they like, what prices work and don't work, and they can select something. It would be an opportunity for us to try, and I would call it, we would hunt for insurance, not shop. Shopping is you look and you pick and choose. Hunting is you look, you try and get something. There's the option. Do you want it? Okay. Otherwise, it's gone, and someone else takes it, and that opportunity is lost. So I would hope that everybody obtained something. I know, again, if they had a loan, then the likelihood is the lender put an insurance policy to protect their loan. So at least they're not going to go without a home and still have a mortgage, but they might not have the ability to rebuild the home if that's the only policy they have. If they did get a policy with, for example, the California Fair Plan, then we should believe they at least have fire insurance if they selected the coverages properly. So they should have something. The problem is that Fair Plan doesn't have unlimited limits that it can offer per location. For example, on a home, the most that they can write is $3 million in coverage, period, which might sound like a lot depending on where people are watching from, but it is not a lot in Pacific Palisades. It's not a lot in California to be, for example, really at all. So people that might have had a home that was too large meaning that the limits that the Fair Plan offers were not significant, were not enough to give them a full replacement cost policy, might have either had to go with less coverage than they wanted, or, like I said, cut back on the types of coverage that they get to be able to stay within that limit. Every time a policy renews, which is every year, I call it, re-upping your vows, right? Every year, you get to look at the insurance policy and decide if you want to keep it or not. And the carrier gets to look at the risk and decide if they want to keep it or not, right? You're reaffirming your vows. So this is not a new practice. What's different is, in the past, an inspector might come out to the house and look around and say, oh, you know what? You have trees overhanging the roof. That's not very safe for fire. You have to cut those back before we're going to renew the policy. And now with technology, instead of doing that, carriers were using either drones or satellite images or some fixed air planes that would fly over and take higher image quality photos and give them information. The problem was nobody told anyone this, right? If somebody's coming to my house to inspect it at renewal, I know they're coming, right? If all of a sudden I get a picture of my house, it's sort of like those cameras that take pictures of you when you're driving through the intersection. You're like, what happened? I didn't know that was happening. You just get a picture of yourself, smiling and zooming through the intersection. So people were getting these pictures of their homes and being told this is a condition that needs to be fixed. What they didn't realize, well, some people might have, is that it's not perfect. And sometimes it was the wrong house. I've heard stories. Or sometimes they might say, well, there's a condition on the roof that needs to be corrected. Well, it turns out that the image they were looking at was just a skylight on the roof. So what consumers needed to do was to contact their agent or broker or contact the carrier directly if that's how they've purchased their policy and say, hey, I received this. There's a mistake. Here's a picture of my roof, or that's just a skylight. And then everything is okay. The problem is, and I get it, people are not huge fans of the insurance industry. It's just one of those things. They would get that letter and just get angry and say, I've been non-renewed. What am I going to do? And then they would go off trying to get coverage from another company, which likely would do the same thing when they see that whatever the condition was that they were being non-renewed for. So the takeaway is, if you're getting some type of non-renewal notice, whatever the reason, whether it be an on-site inspection, a drone that might have done an inspection, or just because they claim the area is now considered to be too high of a fire risk, you have the ability to go back and say, yeah, but what about this, right? It's not in stone. It doesn't mean that period, end of story, you're done. One of the reasons that an insurance company has to non-renew versus cancel, and there's a difference. When you hear someone say they were canceled, technically that means that they received a letter that said you no longer have coverage now. That's not what's happening. What people are getting are non-renewal notices that are saying when your policy is coming up for renewal at this date in the future, we're not going to renew it. Big difference. One gives you time, right, to go back and fix the condition if there is one, appeal it if there's not a condition issue to begin with, and work with that. So I think as consumers, we just have to take a little bit of our power that we have, maybe we didn't realize we had, and when we receive these notices, see if we can correct the issue. If the issue exists, remember the carriers, they don't want you to have a loss, right? That's how they make money, by you not having claims. So if they're telling you something and you can do it, it's good for everybody. It means you're not going to have a loss, right? Loss is bad. We want to avoid that for us. And it's good because we're not going to have to worry about having our premiums go up or the carrier non-renew us. It depends on the insurance company and if it's admitted or not, but it's at least 60 days. Not only are you covered, but what the Department of Insurance did was anyone that had a policy in any of the affected zip codes or what are called the surrounding zip codes has extra protection, meaning even if you did receive a non-renewal and it was supposed to take place right now, the carriers can't enforce that. So what they're doing is, and again, people don't understand that they have to do something to make that happen. Just because the insurance commissioner says, insurance companies, you cannot non-renew properties in or adjacent to these fire areas, it doesn't all of a sudden change the programming and the underwriting and everything in every insurance company that writes business. If you receive a non-renewal notice and you're in one of those zip codes, then all they have to do if they receive that notification is call the company and say, you can't non-renew me. And they get a solid year before the carrier can even look to non-renew them again. So we have a lot of protections that are in place for consumers. But again, they need to know, right? They hear that they have protection, but that doesn't mean that it just happens. They have to actually enforce it themselves if they do happen to receive a letter. The California Fair Plan is actually not a state organization. It's only for California properties, but it's not run by the state. It's run by the insurance industry. And the organization was created by the state of California by law, basically telling the companies, if you're going to write insurance in California, we're going to have this organization. You're going to have to fund it and run it and be sure that it can offer basic fire insurance. And that's what it's doing now. And it's funded 100% by private insurance companies that are admitted to do business in California. Our tax dollars, there's not a penny that goes to the Fair Plan. So what's happening is, for example, if a policy is written with the Fair Plan, premium is used to pay claims. If there's not enough money to pay the claims, then the California Fair Plan has what's called reinsurance, which is basically insurance for insurance organizations. So more money comes from there. If that's exhausted, then in order to be sure that those claims are paid, the Fair Plan goes back to all of those carriers that run the organization, and they will send them an assessment. And all of those admitted carriers have to chip in based on their market share to pay those claims. So it's a huge bill. There's no question that the insurance industry is going to be paying from Fair Plan. And it's always a little bit of an odd thing to try and conceptualize, because if you go to a company and they say, I can't write you because of the fire risk, and you end up at the Fair Plan, and they're still running the fire risk. The difference is they might be only assessed a percentage of that particular loss versus being on that loss entirely themselves. The first thing is we have to be comfortable that we're going to get paid the money that we're due from our insurance policies. An insurance policy is just a contract. So we should have the expectation that we're going to get compensated according to our insurance policies. I can tell you so far that I have not seen anything to indicate that the carriers are not stepping up and really stepping up their game. This is go time, right? This is what I tell our staff as well. We're not here for, your toilet overflowed, it's a couple of grand, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's bad. You have coverage. Okay. We're here for now. That's why we're around the clock answering the phone and emailing and texting and trying to help people. So we need to be sure that our consumers get the compensation that they have for these policies. And so far, everything seems to be working out the way we want it to be. I've seen EFT transfers in the millions of dollars within days or hours of some of these claims being filed. So that's working. As far as what needs to happen next, the Department of Insurance finally passed some new guidelines. They were first introduced in September of 2023. They go under the umbrella name of the Sustainable Insurance Strategy. It's basically updating laws that haven't been updated since the 80s. And what that's supposed to do is help the industry find a way to deal with the way we're dealing with these types of events right now. Insurance is based on what's the probability of a loss, and they come up with a premium on that. Well, when we're having a near certainty of a loss, how do you insure for that, right? How can you insure a risk that you can't look and figure out the math? I call them the big brains. The actuaries can sit down and they're not going to say, well, this has XYZ likelihood, where they can say, this is going to happen. It's just a matter of, is it going to happen this year or next year? These wildfires that we're having are what are called 100-year events. They're priced in to happen every 100 years, and we're having them every 3 to 4 years. So how do you insure the uninsurable? That's something that we're going to have to learn to deal with and figure out a solution that works for the industry and for consumers. And it's not just California. I mean, I'm born and raised here, so I can say this, right? Everyone hates on California. I think it's jealousy personally, but everyone hates on California. But this problem is happening everywhere. This is happening in Colorado, a different type of loss type in Florida, in Texas. We're seeing this everywhere. So I think what's going to happen at some point is there's going to have to be some type of consolidation for risks that are uninsurable, whether it be windstorm, flood, earthquake, fire, whatever it might be. And that's going to have to find some way to be federally backed. Something like the SBA, right? Because if you can't find a way to make a profit and sell a policy, that eliminates the private insurance companies, right? I mean, they are not nonprofits. And if a loss is a certainty, there's no way to insure for that. So there's going to have to be some level of governmental intervention that's going to handle these types of losses. Like I said, whether it be earthquakes, floods, fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, you name it. We seem to be seeing everything everywhere right now.